Hi, my name is Sam and welcome to Carve's Performance Garage. In this episode, we're going to be dropping the engine, dropping the driveline in to Miss EJ. There was meant to have been a part 2 to the Miss EJ engine assembly video, but unfortunately I accidentally deleted all the footage, so there won't be a second video. But luckily for me, I own a Subaru, so I do pull apart these engines on a regular basis. So it means that there will be a video of pulling apart an engine, hopefully pretty soon, or unhopefully. But anyway, it's a long video, so let's get straight into it. So we've finally got Miss EJ in the hoist bay, because the plan is I'm just going to quickly whack on the turbo. Pretty much everything else that needs to be done to the engine can be done from in the car pretty easily. So at least it means that we can get this out of the shed. Plus, while we're at it, we're also going to put the driveline in. So we've got a H6, 6-speed and R160 diff that will be going in. So that should be able to hold the power a lot better and hopefully make it a lot more drivable. So I'm going to whack the turbo on. Girlfriend behind me, Ebony, she's going to do a few other little jobs, and I'll probably get her to do some of the transmission stuff, but I'll get the turbo out, get that plugged in at least, and then we could start getting the whole driveline and the engine in. So let's get to it. So I know to change the diff that you don't necessarily have to remove the rear drive shafts. You can pull them out and there's enough clearance to remove the diff, but I did want to remove them just so it meant that I could give it a clean, grease it up. So it means that if we ever were to have trouble with this drive shaft, like at the track, we'll be able to easily remove it and replace it. But unfortunately, it will not come out. I have WD-40'd it so much, and I've got the hammer with a old axle nut and just tried smacking it and it will not move. So I'm going to try this 3-jaw puller. I saw a video on it. I know it's probably not the best because it could actually pull the bearings out, but that's a risk I'm willing to take at the moment. So I'll remove the caliper, the disc, and then we can try this and hopefully the shaft will come out. So let's get to it. Unfortunately, my microphone ran out of battery, but what I was wanting to say is when you're removing the rear brake rotors, if they are really difficult to get off / they're stuck, first of all, make sure the handbrake's off, and second of all, you can get a M8 by 1.25 mil bolt, and you can thread that through the rotor, and that will push against the hub and pull the rotor out. So this broke. Obviously it was in there too strong. So what I am going to do, I'm going to remove the hub and the handbrake assembly and also remove the drive shaft. And I'm going to leave it tipped up and spray WD-40 down there and really wait for it to penetrate. So I guess I'll need to go get a new one of these. And hopefully after a bit of time, after it's penetrating, it will come out. But I was not expecting it to be that seized, but obviously it is. So let's take the hub off and yeah, get it soaking. So because the Liberty 6-speed uses a different drive gear ratio compared to the 5-speed that we've got in there, we also need to change the diff. So this is still a R160, which is pretty much the same diff that's in the car. It's, I believe it's 3.9 or 3.5 compared to 4.4. So before we chuck it in, I'm going to give it a little bit of a clean, because clean stuff is always the best. And then we shall remove the old diff and put this new one in. So it turns out that the threads, dowels, I'm trying to think what they're called, but basically the lib ones are longer than the GD ones, so I need to remove them. So to remove them, I'm going to use the classic mechanic trick, which is you thread on a nut backwards if it wants to thread on. I do a really terrible job at explaining how to remove these studs, but I ended up stuffing up one of the studs, so in the next video I'm going to be going through how to remove a stud on a diff. So I stuffed up one of the studs, but the other stud was in. Luckily I do have a spare diff cross member for the bushings, so I'm going to put one of them in the car and the other one I'm going to get the bushings pressed out so we can put some fresh bushings back in. But now it's time to install the diff. So the diff's in, the install definitely didn't go as well as I thought it was going to, but I honestly just haven't perfected the technique of removing and installing diffs in these cars yet. I know that there is like a little shuffle that you have to do, but I just don't know how to do it yet, but I will learn one day. So next step in this process is onto the transmission, getting that ready, and then get that mounted up. So here's the 6-speed, and there's a few things that we need to change. So basically, GD only has one O2 sensor, so it means that we can remove these. There shouldn't be too much. We've got a iWire kit because of the ABS. Because ABS is done inside the box, I believe, there's a few things. There's a wiring kit that we have that will adapt it, so that should be fine. But the first thing that I'm going to tackle is there's these dowel pins on the brand new 207. It has those dowel pins included, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to knock them out of the gearbox. I'm going to add some heat just to try loosen up the edge here, and then I've got a hammer and a punch, and we'll punch it out. So let's start swapping stuff over and getting it all sorted out. So I ended up just using the engine crane just to lift the gearbox on top of here. 6 speeds are incredibly heavy, and even 5 speeds are, so I would always use a second person or something to assist you. But now it's up here, we can give the belt inside the bell housing a clean and the mating surface. I've already gone through on Mr. EJ when I put the gearbox in that, my procedure that I go through. But just to quickly summarize it, I give this outside a good clean. I then give the inside a good clean. We've got a new clutch fork to go in. So all this will get re-greased and cleaned. So let's get started. Came on this 6-speed, the bushings were absolutely shot, so I replaced them. But turned out that the STI shifter linkage that we got already had some brand new bushings in the knuckle, so it kind of was pointless to replace these ones. But now with the gearbox prepped and ready, it's time to put it in the car. I had a little bit of trouble installing the gearbox, mainly because of the position I had the box on the trans jack, and that was mainly because of the cross member. So unfortunately the camera died when I actually did put the gearbox in, so here is the clip of me putting it in, taking it out after I realized that I had it in the wrong position on the trans jack. So now that the transmission's in, before we can put the engine in, because of my setup and how wide my shed is, I can't actually leave the car on the hoist while I put the engine in. I need to bring it down, roll it back, so then I've got enough room. But it means that we need to get all the wheels on so we can roll it. So before I put the wheels on, one big thing that I always do is I clean the end of the drive shafts, I clean inside the hub, and then I also put some anti-seize lubricant on it. I did used to use white lithium grease, but I'm going to change over and try the aluminium anti-seize, see how that goes, because I think the white lithium grease just doesn't hold temperature well enough. So usually when you're replacing the diff, you don't actually need to take the drive shafts completely out. You can just pull them out and then pull the hub away. But because this is a track car, I wanted to make sure that the shafts were not stuck because of serviceability. So if we break a drive shaft at the track, it means that we can quickly chuck it out, put a new one in and get home or get back on the track. To get the rear drive shaft out of the hub, I've tried pretty much every single method. So hammering, I've even used my press, which I broke. I've literally been soaking it in penetrant WD-40, then I tried CRC spray. I've tried that. I tried acetone and automatic trans fluid. Nothing. Hammer, air chisel, nothing. So I'm going to send the hubs to a shop. I'm prepared to sacrifice the wheel bearings, but at least in the meantime, we just need to chuck a hub in so we can roll it. And when I get it back over into the other work bay, that's when I'll pull it off and I'll send it to a shop. I did try to source some new WRX rear hubs, which I did, but unfortunately the guy didn't tell me that what was also included with those rear hubs, which was the drive shafts, which were seized in there. So unfortunately, it meant that the the hubs that I was so happy about that I found at a damn good price as well, didn't actually fix my initial problem. But I'm sure we'll be able to get it out. If not, what we'll do, we will run the car on one of the hubs and we'll drive it around for a bit, so that should get some heat into it and hopefully that might help loosen stuff up. But in the meantime, I'm cleaning the inside splines, then I'll clean the outside splines on the drive shaft, and we'll whack it in and get the rear suspension back together. So now that the wheels are on, I can finally put the engine in because I can roll the car back. But before I start putting the engine in, I'm going to go through and give this place a huge cleanup because it is absolutely trashed with tools because I've had multiple builds going on at once. So let's give it a good cleanup before we chuck the engine in, and I'll be back with you just before we're about to put everything in.
Later.
The engine's ready to go. I gave the shed a quick cleanup and the car is fully prepared and ready to go. All I need to do is basically put the engine on the engine crane and then attach the flywheel and the clutch. And once that's done, it will be ready to put in. So let's hoist this bad boy up and start working on getting the clutch on. So now that the engine's in a bit better of a position, we can install the flywheel. So we actually had this machined ages and ages ago, just in preparation for when we finally had time to put the engine in. So let's get this mounted. now it's time to torque it. Because of how it hangs and whatnot, it's actually really annoying and hard to torque it by myself. So I'm going to quickly go grab my sister and get her help. And while we're torquing that, we're also going to do the pressure plate and the clutch. So we'll do that all at once, and I'll explain a bit more after that's all done and torqued up. So unfortunately the camera cut out while I was doing it, but basically it's all torqued up. So because this is a STI 6-speed, the flywheel bolts, they get torqued up to 75 Newton meters, not 72 I believe it is. And then these ones for the pressure plate, torqued at 16 Newton meters. I'm pretty sure that's correct. If not, I'm just 1 or 2 Newton meters off, but it's all torqued down now. We went for a heavy duty XCD clutch. So the reason why we've decided to go with a heavy duty clutch on this car is because she'll be pushing more power than stock, aiming for around about 250 kilowatts or so. So this clutch will definitely do for this amount of power. Plus then also it will still be good for any future power upgrades as well. Usually if you're running stock power, then I would go for a regular OEM clutch, not heavy duty, just stock standard, whatever came on the car, because you want your failure point to be the clutch, because let's just say $1,000 clutch is way better than a $1,500 diff, $3,000 gearbox, or like a $6,000 motor. One thing that I do have to laugh a lot is when people in naturally aspirated Subarus get a heavy duty clutch, because all they're really doing is just making a harder pedal for themselves. It's not going to last longer. Some people think the heavy duty means that there's more clutch material, so it lasts longer, but no, it's mainly just the clamping force and sometimes a bit of a difference with the material used with the clutch disc. I'm pretty sure that's all correct, but that's just been my understanding. So anyway, now that this is all ready to go, let's mate up the engine with the transmission, get it in, and then once that's done, it will just be lots of final finishing touches. So let's chuck her in and hopefully it all goes smoothly. Is finally in, so it means that now that it's all bolted up and everything, I'm going to move it into the other work bay. But before then, I also need to clear everything that is currently sitting there because it is a huge mess. Anyway, in terms of installing the engine, It took me a bit longer than usual because of how I had the engine mounted on the engine crane. Ever since I got that engine stabilizer, I have not been as quick with pulling in and out engines, mainly because I just can't get the mounting right. And so I'm going to ask a few of my Subaru mates for them to take photos of exactly where they mount it. So it means I shouldn't have any troubles in the future. But I always seem to have it mounted so it's tilting to one side. Because it's tilting to one side, I then need to like lift it to shuffle in because you're lifting it from one side. It's just a huge mess. That is something I definitely need to improve on a lot. Because if I can nail that, then I'm sure removing and putting engines in will be so much faster and so much less painful. So thank you so much for watching this video on putting the driveline and the engine in Miss EJ. I hope you enjoyed it. Next part is basically bolting everything else together and getting the engine running, but I'm going to do that in a few different parts, mainly because there is some items on the car regarding like the Liberty conversion and the fuel system that I want to make some videos on to show how I've done it, because there's not too much resources on the internet regarding some different topics. So if there are any different topics you would like me to cover, please comment them down below in the comment section. Along with any sort of suggestions on topics, if you have any feedback or opinions or whatnot, put them down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking it. And if you are enjoying my content, please hit the subscribe button. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at 07cars. And as always, thank you so much again for watching. My rear main seal extended version has hit over 1,000 views. So thank you so much for watching it. Hopefully that video has helped a lot of you guys with installing the rear main seal, as it is an annoying task to do on these cars. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, keep on learning.